Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. We're live, we're national. It's the Monday night edition of our program. Happy Passover, happy Holy Week. Busy time. I know a lot of people are off tonight, so Godspeed to all of those that are taking time off. I am not off. I'm working the late shift with you straight till the next 3 hours, so keep it locked here. I don't want to say till midnight or 1 a.m. because there's a bunch of listeners on the West Coast, and I don't ever want anybody to feel alienated because I'm a New Yorker. So anyway, here's the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And some of the stuff we're getting into tonight, we've got a bunch that we're going to chat about. Of course, we're going to talk about the latest with the markets, the latest with tariffs, the latest with all of that stuff. Then we're going to have some conversation about what we don't have enough conversation about. Another genocide of Christians, this time 60 that were killed in Nigeria. It's really sad stuff, but this is what happens. And, of course, we'll continue our conversation on what happened in the White House today, because El Trompito did not take a day off today either. He was in the Oval Office meeting with Nayib Bukele, who is the president of El Salvador. And the president of El Salvador has taken a little heat, honestly, for comments that he made. I know he, not too long ago, made some comments kind of directed at Mexico, saying if a state can't protect its children, it has no reason to exist. And this is, again, a critique that I believe he launched at the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, because of her inaction to protect kids from trafficking by the cartels. And this criticism is now begging the question, how do states like Mexico fall completely under the control of the cartels? And I think the answer to that is pretty simple. Politics and propaganda work. It's really the same way the Democrats took over New York. They took over California. They took over Massachusetts. They took over Colorado and many other states. Politics works. Propaganda works too. These tactics are different, right? Because mobilizing people and resources is what every politician does. But the outcomes can be different. And this is where I think there's a disconnect, right? Because while you can have different outcomes along the way, there's a bottom line that everybody's looking for, and that bottom line is victory. So whether you're in the business of politics, you're in the business of propaganda, you're both looking for victory. And here's what I mean by this. When Mark Zuckerberg from Facebook, who's in the hot seat right now, testifying and whatnot, we'll get an update on that maybe tomorrow. When Zuckerberg spent $400 million on nonprofits to bolster elections in Democrat cities, what did he see? He saw victory. Now, did he go about the right way? No, of course not. You know, when you control the Board of Elections and most of the courts, it's not as hard as some might think when you're dealing with politicians that break the rules, the way they take breaths. Things become easier, right? Lawmakers have a lot of ability. Now, I'm not saying that what he did was right, creating these shell organizations that strictly benefited Democrats and whatnot. But I'm saying it ended up being effective. In the grand scheme of things, he wanted his guy in. He got his guy in. I'm talking about Zuckerberg and Biden. So listen, I get it. It's politics. And deciphering the propaganda from proper facts is our job as informed patriots. But there's no reason that the deck is stacked against you, right? Or I should say there's no question that the deck is stacked against you, especially if you're playing fair. Because they're going to illegally use and abuse the power of their office to get whatever they want. They will label you a Russian agent, a racist, a rapist. And if that doesn't work, they're going to come right back and try and lock you up on some trumped up charges. They'll invent crimes out of thin air. We've seen it before. Now, that doesn't change the fact that grassroots politics work. Look at Trump's MAGA movement. It's a huge movement, right? So you get a little everything in this big movement. But by and large, it's a movement of the people, for the people, and literally by the people. This is not a populist movement of corporate America. No two ways about it. This is a movement of people. Now, by the left's standards, Donald Trump is the MAGA standard bearer. He's a convicted felon. He's guilty in their eyes of many other crimes, right? But in reality, he's a man of the people, despite being a billionaire. And I feel that people view, even people that view politics differently, when they see somebody that gets caught on a hot mic, right, in his infamous locker room talk video, someone that's been married multiple times, they see someone in Donald Trump that that's relatable, that they can see themselves falling into situations like that. This is why people trust him, because they know that they've trusted Democrats in the past, and they've seen zero results, more of the same, literally what Einstein defined as insanity. So when you see legal immigrants, Hispanics in particular, that's who I'm talking about, nearly 70% voting for Donald Trump, this tells you that they also don't favor a system of immigration that's open to whomever and whenever. Hispanics, just like white people and black people and Asians and everybody else, they want to live in a safe neighborhood with good schools, a good police force, right? They want to make a good life for themselves, for their families as they pursue the American dream. That's it. The American dream may be interchangeable for some people. For others, it's different. But it's let me do my thing and let me mind my business. You mind yours. That doesn't change how I started here, though. Good politics work. And bad politics work, too. Now, if both work and you want to do the right thing, then it's clear to me, if you do politics well, you're going to see a good result. And MAGA is the proof of that, right? The proof in the pudding is make America great again. So going back to Bukele, his sentiment that a country can't defend children against traffickers or from being beaten or from a boy pretending to be a girl or from girls and boys in sports that they shouldn't be in. All of this is more kind of fodder for him, right? Saying, you're right. These nation states should not exist. I think people would gravitate to that idea. And that's why so many Americans support Donald Trump. That's why so many El Salvadorians support Bukele. That's why I support Donald Trump. And that's why good politics work despite all of the deceit coming from the left. So take heart, amigos. I think what we saw in the White House today was the beginning of a lot of good meetings with like-minded world leaders that are agreeing that people have power. The bad guys don't always have to win. So keep it locked right here. We're just getting started. We got a lot coming up. I got a lot to discuss tonight. And again, we're doing the economy. We're doing the Bukele visit. And we're talking about the genocide of Christians. So don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations, everybody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right?
That's
but
right.
You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The Reciprocal Act was basically, guys, if you come to the table and negotiate with us and treat us the same way we treat you, then we'll get your rate really low. And so right now, 130 countries have responded, and we're negotiating with them, and they've got their rate down to 10%. And so really, it's kind of almost a two-world system. There's a process about China, and that's very, very nascent, if at all. And then the process for everybody else. So the process for everybody else is orderly. It's clear. People are coming to town with great offers. We've got Japan, Korea, India. I was just talking to the foreign minister of India, and everything is moving forward very quickly. And so I guess the bottom line is that the small business owner has experienced over the last few weeks the start of a process that's settling down really quite quickly. Again, 130 countries are at 10% now.
That is Kevin Hassett. He is the director of the National Economic Council, and he was on CNN saying that 130 countries have now responded to Trump's tariffs. And I want to bring in somebody that has also been on this National Economic Council for President Trump in Trump 1.0. He was also involved in Reagan's administration as an economist. Steve Moore is with us. Steve Moore is the head of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. Steve Moore, welcome back.
Hey, Rich. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. So when you hear Kevin Hassett say all these countries are stepping up, what is your take on that? I know last week there was a lot of talk. Everybody was mad at Trump. He's breaking everything. Now they're like, man, he's actually sharper than we think. Do you think more people have come around to that thinking, or are people still being very critical?
Some countries have come to the table, some haven't. I don't know the full list. Kevin knows that. I'm not privy to that information. We need, there's about 12 or 15 countries that really matter, that really make up the global economy, and most of the other countries are pretty small and insignificant in the grand scheme of things. So I'd be curious to see, what Germany and Japan and France and Spain and Canada and, of course, India, what deal they put on the table. This is a strategy that is risky, but if Trump can pull this off and avoid a trade war, but actually get to a situation where every country lowers their tariffs, I think that would be fantastic. Look, I'm a free trade guy. When two countries trade voluntarily, by definition, they're both better off. And just as I trade with you, and we voluntarily exchange, that's what the core of what economics is all about. So I'm hopeful. I do know this: Trump is an amazing deal maker. He's an incredible negotiator, and I wouldn't doubt that he's going to come away with a victory here.
Steve Moore, there was a lot of hullabaloo, 7 days ago, Black Monday, the
right,
sky is
right.
falling, then we bounce back. Do you expect more of that as we continue these negotiations on tariffs?
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of turbulence. I think you're going to get motion sickness watching the stock market go up and down with the gyrations, depending on the latest news of the day. So it's going to be a choppy period for sure. It's not going to be, but there's two things that have to happen to really restore confidence in the market. One is get as many of these trade deals with our major trading partners done. And the second of all thing is what I talked to you a month ago or so on this show, which is the tax bill. We have to get that, that's really critical, because if that doesn't happen, American families are going to face a $4 trillion tax increase in January. So both of those things are on a pretty good course right now, and I'm feeling pretty upbeat.
Yeah, I like that idea. And I also like the idea that there's going to be continued turbulence. I know everybody's freaking out about their 401k, but Steve Moore, I'll say this. This means that there are going to be a number of days where we can buy stocks on sale, which I think is a really good thing.
I'm with you on that. I said about a week ago that I thought now was a good time to buy shares of stock. I do think you want to buy these dips. And we've had some pretty steep dips in the last week or two, but by the way, I'm not saying the market could. We're at something like 40,000 now on the Dow. It could go to 35,000.
Right.
What I'm saying is that if you buy the stocks today, and you hold on to them for 2, 5, 8, 6 years, you'll be really happy with the returns you get. I mean, I'm a big believer that it's what's called stocks for the long term. Especially for your listeners, if you're under the age of 40, you want to be invested. the best place to invest is in American companies, the blue chips.
Yeah, I hear that, brother. Now, Steve Moore, the Chinese have been very reticent of Trump's strategy. They say, oh yeah, you're going to give us 125. All right, we're going to give you 85. We're going to do this. We're going to go to 84, whatever their number is now. Trump's saying another 20. I think the 145, whatever the number is. Things are getting difficult for China. And I understand that there are some of their trading partners that are now saying, look, this isn't going to work out good. We can't unload stuff into the U.S. because you guys are making it. It doesn't look like it's going to work for us. And the propaganda wars are at it. They're making the memes online with fat Americans working in sweatshops. And, we're making memes of their factories being vacant, like a ghost town. What's going on?
Right. So it's not really a very complicated story. China is an evil empire, unfortunately. Throughout the 80s and early 90s, they were really moving towards a freedom revolution, and then President Xi came in and turned them back into a communist nation that is centrally planned, that is building up their military in a very aggressive and dangerous way. They cheat, they lie, they steal. I'm not talking about the Chinese people. I'm talking about the Chinese government, and so we have to be very tough with China, in my opinion. I don't know if you agree. What is your feeling about China?
Listen, I'm further to the right than you are with China. I think, honestly, I tell people, save money, sell your car. Things are going to get more expensive, but don't buy Chinese. Yeah,
no, I'm with you totally. And I'm a free trade guy. I do believe in free trade, but I tell people, just sell China. Don't buy Chinese things. If it has a China on the label, don't buy it. If you spend $4 more for a pair of shoes, is that really that big of a sacrifice? But so I think Trump is the first president to really recognize them as the menace that they are. And the other point I want to make, Rich, is that this tit for tat idea that China of retaliation, that is not going to work for China, because if we can't trade with China, we'll sneeze. If they can't trade with us, they're going to catch pneumonia. Their economy will go into a Great Depression. We stay strong. And if the American people just say, no, we're not buying your crap anymore. It's not very good crap anyway, So I think in the end of the day, China is either going to have to change their ways, or their economy is going to get hit really hard. And the Chinese people have to rise up against Xi and run him out. He is a dictator. He's like Mao. Mao, of course, was the greatest, murderer in the history of civilization. I think he killed 100 million people. So I do think that it's important that we stand up to China now before they become even, a bigger threat.
Well, I agree with you on that. I really do. And I didn't always have that opinion. I used to say, look, live and let live. Go ahead. But it was my brother, honestly, who made me start cooking in a cast iron skillet that was made in the USA. And he told me, listen, bro, these people are coming to eat our lunch. And this was years ago. And he said, they're coming to eat our lunch. Spend more money on your T-shirts. Spend more money on your socks. Buy American, because if you don't, they're going to win. And I thought he was a little radical at first, but as I thought about it, I said, you know what? I think you're right. Steve Moore, stick with me. I want to come back and ask you about the chips, because now China says, oh, no chips for anybody since we have rare earth minerals. I want to know how big that threat is in your opinion, plus the impact it's having on the Chinese economy. Folks, we're coming right back with Steve Moore from the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, and he's got a kick-butt newsletter. Stay right here. We're coming right back. I'm Rich Valdez.
Call screener, who is a budding radio star, by the way. Richie Valdez is terrific.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Let's keep in mind, tariffs can be an important tool in the toolbox when used in targeted ways. But right now, what we've got is chaos and corruption. Donald Trump has imposed a tariff on everyone, everywhere on all products. That's the 10% tariff. Of course, it was much higher earlier in the week. And now in this trade war with China that basically tries to shut down all trade. And then, right out in plain view, as if the chaos weren't enough, he adds a nice layer of corruption for everyone to see, and that is a special deal for his CEO donor, and that is an exception to the China deal for iPhones. Look, here's the problem. You can't get an economy strong and moving forward when it's loaded with chaos and corruption. Investors will not invest in the United States when Donald Trump is playing red light, green light with tariffs.
Red light, green light with tariffs, chaos, and corruption. That's Senator Elizabeth Warren, who President Trump affectionately has nicknamed Pocahontas. And Senator Warren is very upset, saying that these tariffs are loaded with chaos and corruption. She's threatening legal action. She's doing all sorts of things. And I want to bring Steve Moore back into this. Steve Moore is an economist with Ronald Reagan's administration. He was an economist with President Trump's first administration. And he is the head of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. And if you don't have their newsletter, you don't know what you're missing. But Steve Moore, the Chinese are really feeling the brunt of this, at least from what I can tell. Is there anything of truth to what Senator Warren is saying?
Well, I just was kind of laughing and listening to her talk about chaos and corruption, because that's all she's ever supported in her years in Washington. I mean, she's supported higher taxes and more regulation and all the massive waste that has been, when I talk about corruption, Elizabeth, Senator Warren, what about, the fact that Medicaid had $160 billion of fraudulent payments? How about, the foreign aid programs were hundreds of millions of dollars. They can't even tell where it went. How about the fact that we're spending tens of billions of dollars on empty office buildings, and you did nothing about it. The Department of Education and the massive amount of federal employees who didn't show up for work. So I just think it's kind of ironic that she'd talk about chaos and corruption. Look, I'm not a huge fan of tariffs myself, and I'd like to see a world where nations got rid of their tariffs. And I think at the end of the day, that's probably where Trump hopefully will lead us. But I want to go back to something you were asking me about before the break, Rich, if I may, when you were asking about China, because this is really an important point. And I think we're both in agreement, you and I, that China is a real villain here. But we're going to find out in the course of the next 6 months or so who our friends are and allies are and who's not. Because you've seen a lot of these countries, who we bailed them out 2 or 3 times, in wars and through NATO. We've spent $1 trillion on NATO over the last 40 years, and yet some of these countries say, well, they're mad at Trump, so we're going to just trade with China. If those countries do that, they're out. I don't regard them as an ally. An ally is someone who comes to your defense. Right. Some of the countries are not. So I'd say screw them. If they're not going to defend us, why should we defend them?
Good point. Good point. Now, to the point that I think the left has been really pushing today in the media, which is China saying no rare earth minerals for you. And you want chips. Well, you're not going to get any chips because we're not going to allow you to have any. And you watch how you're going to have to fold because you need the chips. What do you think about that?
Well, it infuriates me for a couple of reasons. This is where we're stupid. Our politicians have been stupid. We have more rare earth minerals than any other country in the world. We have trillions of dollars worth of minerals in Utah, in mountains of Colorado, Montana, the Dakotas, California. Those are unbelievably richly endowed. $12 trillion is the estimate of how much these minerals are worth, and we haven't been doing mining in this country for practically 20 years. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. I mean,
is that because of the radical left and their climate agenda?
Yes. They will not let us do any mining in this country, and now it's almost criminally negligent that we are dependent on China for these minerals that we have plenty of in our own backyard.
China couldn't have planned it better themselves.
Exactly. We played right. Same thing, with not drilling. all we did was play into the hands of the Saudis and the Iranians and the Russians. So, sometimes we do stupid things in Washington that hurt our country. Well, I guarantee you Trump's going to start mining. He's going to start drilling. So we're not dependent on these countries.
Yeah, well, I'm with you on that. And I think part of the problem with that is so many people have bought into this. If you drill, you ruin everybody and everything. You ruin the water tables. You're breaking everything. We have to save what we have for a rainy day. If we use it now, we'll run out forever. And I, for one, don't know much about that. But every geologist I've spoken with tells me it's either unknown or untrue.
Hundreds and hundreds of years of these minerals, and even like natural gas. I mean, we have 500 years worth of coal. We have 200 years worth of oil. We have 250 years worth of natural gas, and that's with existing technology. I mean, the technology is going to get better and better and better over time. So we're not running out of this stuff. It's just that we've got these kind of no drilling, no mining mentality. By the way, do you think China cares about the environment?
Of course not.
They're building 50 coal plants this year. We can't produce one.
Now, Steve Moore, I want to get your reaction to the head of the UAW union, Shawn Fain. He made some comments about the tariffs, and I think they were shocked. I wasn't shocked, but I think the left was shocked because they asked him these questions on CNN. Listen to this.
Donald Trump is not doing what other presidents have done in the past. This is very different. So this is dangerous. And I do think the people that are walking around talking about the sky is falling, Chicken Little, they are probably right this time, no?
No, I don't believe they are. No, look, here's the problem. We're talking about tariffs on everything under the sun right now. Now, that we've been very clear. We do believe, and we know, when it comes to auto, when it comes to heavy truck and agricultural implement, we know that tariffs will influence these companies to do the right thing and reinvest in this country and reinvest in factories in this country. It's interesting. Stellantis, as Trump was announcing the tariff, announced at the same moment that they were going to lay off 800 people. That didn't change as Trump was making an announcement. To me, it's just trying to bait people. At the end of the day, we believe that Stellantis and these companies will bring work back because of these tariffs.
So again, that's Shawn Fain from the UAW having a conversation with Simone Sanders Townsend on MSNBC. Forgive me, I misgendered them and called them CNN. Steve Moore, your reaction.
Well, look, first of all, for the last 40 years, we haven't lost auto jobs. It's just Michigan and the forced union states have lost auto jobs. I mean, the auto workers union was responsible for a lot of these factories shutting down with these crazy, outrageous demands. And so we're creating a lot of auto jobs, but they're in Tennessee, they're in Texas, they're in Alabama. They've all gone south. So unions, and I'm not anti-union, but the idea that you should be forced to join a union, no, I'm not. I think that's outrageous. Every state should be a right-to-work state. You should have the right to join the union or right not to join the union. That's a constitutional principle of the right of association, and let every worker for themselves decide whether they want to join the union or not. So the jobs, the jobs that are right-to-work states create twice as many jobs as the states that have forced union laws.
Steve Moore, before we wrap, I want you to make the best plug that you can make for your newsletter and let everybody know what they missed out on today.
Well, thank you very much, Rich. So we put out an economic little newsletter that you can read in 5 minutes every morning, and it's just an email. It's very popular. It goes out to about 100,000 people, including a lot of people in the White House and a lot of people in Congress, and many CEOs read it. And just go to unleashprosperity.com. unleashprosperity.com, and it's free. It costs nothing. And we want you to have it because we want your listeners to be the smartest people in the room. And this is a good way to do that.
Outstanding. Steve Moore, you're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Rich. Have a great night.
You bet. God bless. And amigos, your thoughts, your calls, and reactions coming up right now. Open phones across America. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
So, as you know, people were celebrating Passover over the weekend. As Christians like me were going to Palm Sunday yesterday. Others were, coming off of the Seder, the Passover Seder. And what I find interesting here is that in Pennsylvania, they lit up the governor's mansion. Arson. Listen to this.
If he was trying to terrorize our family, our friends, the Jewish community who joined us for a Passover Seder in that room last night, hear me on this. We celebrated our faith last night proudly, and in a few hours we will celebrate our second Seder of Passover again proudly. No one will deter me or my family or any Pennsylvanian from celebrating their faith openly and proudly.
Again, that's Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro making a statement here, and the suspect has been identified. You've probably heard about this several times today as Pennsylvania resident Cody Balmer. And he entered the house by hopping a fence and bringing his own kind of Molotov cocktail napalm bombs, homemade incendiary devices and whatnot. And he says himself that he has no history of alcohol abuse, but he was taken in for a mental health evaluation because he was taking medication for mental health. And he stopped taking those pills, quote, because it led him to different types of behavior, end quote. That's from Mr. Balmer himself. So he's currently receiving treatment at a hospital for a medical event that was not connected with the incident or his arrest. Okay. So I guess, he happened to be sick, went, firebombed somebody's house, and went, let me go to my doctor's thing, and then I'll catch up with you guys. I don't know how that works. But anyway, I get the point here. So Shapiro saying, hey, look, I'm not taking no for an answer. There's been some rumor, I'm not sure if it's a rumor or it's an admission, that he was harboring hatred towards Shapiro, which just seems obvious to me. Firebombed the guy's house. He's 38 years old, and he was in the Army Reserves from 2004 to 2012. And that's as much as I know right now. I don't really know a ton here. I'm waiting for the real the answer. I hate him because he's Jewish. I hate him because of COVID. I hate him because of whatever. I have no idea. I don't know why this guy did that. And of course, this is your cue. If you are a conspiracy fact person, this is where you call me 833-482-5337, and you say, Rich, what do you know about Project MK Ultra, CIA mind control? Because this is what they do. They take people that are mentally ill, they're using medications, and they use different types of devices and frequencies to kind of activate them into super soldiers. They go, they commit these atrocities, then they turn them off, and then they hand them over to the authorities. That's what they did with Dylan Roof. That's what they've done with, what's his name, the guy who shot Trump in Pennsylvania. All of them. I mean, this is the same story with every last person, and it's the same, minority of people that believe they're the only people that know about this. And this thing was going on back in the 50s. How do we prove it, right? That's the problem. We can't. And I don't hear Trump talking about it. I don't hear Trump saying, well, this is a result of Project MK Ultra. And, who's Trump afraid of? Nobody. What hasn't he declassified? Nothing. So I don't know if I buy all that just yet. But I want to get your thoughts on this. Let's go over here to, let me see. Let's go to Paul, Boise, Idaho. listening on KBOI. Paul, go right ahead.
Thanks for taking my call, Rich.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm disappointed by the whole thing, particularly the fact that they couldn't celebrate Passover properly because they were interrupted by Molotov cocktails being thrown at them. And I just find it reprehensible. I feel bad for the guy that's got the mental illness that probably precipitated that. But in this state that I live in Idaho, you can't use mental illness as an excuse. They don't allow it. Even if you are mentally ill and you do something against the law, you're going to be charged with that law, whatever it is that you did. So anyway, having said that, it sounds like he tried to do the right thing at one time by being in the guard, is it? That he was. I think he mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe that's where some of it came up, bubbling up the first time or whatever. And, when it goes unabated and you don't take your medication, you run into a lot of issues that you wouldn't have to run into. And it's kind of, you're on your own to take your medication. If you don't take it, you run the risk of doing something stupid and insane like what he did.
Yeah, listen, Paul, I'm going to tell you this. I'm not on anybody's side here except those that are innocent. And in this case, it seems Governor Shapiro, his family, and those who, occupy this residence are the innocents here. This guy's lucky he wasn't shot by the state police and that they didn't have a tighter grip on security that night. Because I can tell you that it doesn't seem that far-fetched to think somebody climbing a fence with homemade bombs should walk away from this with a trip to the hospital. I'm not saying I wish they would have killed him. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying he's lucky, right? This could have ended a lot worse for a lot of people. So God had his hand on all of this. Thank you, Paul, for your thoughts and for your call. Godspeed to you. And we continue with the rest of your calls. Bristow, Virginia, at WMAL coming up. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, we continue with your thoughts, calls, and opinions on anything going on in America at night. Let's go to John in Bristow, Virginia, WMAL. Go right ahead, sir.
Hey, Rich. There's been something your last guest said that triggered this in me. And there's a provision in the Secure Act. This gets a little wonky, but it used to be prior to the Secure Act, if you inherited an IRA or a 401k, you could stretch out those distributions that you receive over your lifetime. Now they have something
now
called
they're capped to 10
rule.
years.
Think about the age of people. Go ahead.
Now they're capped to 10 years.
Absolutely. And the problem with that is that think about when you would most likely inherit these things. You're in your peak earning years when your parents might be in their 80s or 90s and they're dying off. You're at the top of your game, and now you're forced to take these distributions over a 10-year period, which exacerbates your taxable situation. It's just a big government money grab, and nobody seems to be talking about this. And, if we're to be talking about, having new tax policy and lowering taxes and stuff, it seems like on one hand we're talking about lowering taxes, but on the other hand, we have these really onerous tax rules that are lurking out there that not many people are talking about.
It's a fair
They're
point.
Even talking about,
Well,
go ahead.
Rather than talk to me, I think you got to talk to your congressman because this wasn't only passed by Congress once in 2019. It was passed again in 2023, right? You got the Secure Act 1.0 and then you got the Secure Act 2.0 passed by Biden. So I think if you want that stuff changed, you got to lobby your congressman. But very fair point. Thank you for the call, John. WMAL in the building. Amigos, we continue the conversation with most of you. For the rest of you, hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of our program. It's 7 minutes after the hour, and we are live and national. I'm happy to be here with you guys. Our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. If you want to join us, I want to hear what you have to say on the news of the day. And some of the news that happened today, of course, it's Holy Week, right? And we're coming off of Passover. So happy Passover, happy Passion Week to my Christian brethren. And there's some news out there, right? We're going to dig into some of the news. But part of the alarmism that we talked about with Steve Moore is that they're going to stop the chip manufacturers from getting any rare earth minerals that come out of China to prevent, as a negotiating tool to say we're going to bring America to its knees. And I'm talking about China saying that. I don't know how effective that's going to be. I believe it will hurt. I believe it will cost us, but I don't believe that we'll fold. And ultimately, I think that continues to put China in a worse position. Something that always has never been lost on me is to never bite the hand that feeds you. And that's important. And, it may be perceived differently by different people, right? But it's no question that the Chinese have been put on, right? The person that put them on in this game is Bill Clinton, right? Bringing them back into the World Trade Organization, selling them some missile codes and whatnot, and doing business with the Chinese, legitimizing them again. Prior to that, they were pariah. I mean, it was but for Richard Nixon and the ping pong diplomacy, having any type of communication over there, right? So, at least a visit and whatnot. So it was contentious to say the least, and they were not in the position that they are in. But today, they're in a great position, right? Or at least in a better position than they've been in the past. So the question, I think, becomes, what is going to happen with the future of U.S.-China relations? And to me, it's clear they're coming for our lunch. They're using their cheap goods and the stealing of our intellectual property, our ideas, you name it. They steal whatever they can so that they can continue to do what they do. They fund their propaganda on TikTok. I remember doing a story that showed that TikTok had more mentions, U.S. TikTok, right? Not the Chinese version of TikTok, which was really just focused on making their kids smarter, engineering and STEM type of material. But in the United States, it was all about transgenderism. And if you're feeding that out over and over and over to, billions and billions of views to millions and millions of people, what do you think is going to happen if you bombard them with this information? I mean, in effect, you've got China taking over the most watched TV network, TikTok, for young people. And this is the problem that we have today. So I don't know that we need to continue to be coupled with China, as they say in Washington. We need to decouple with China. Yeah, I think we need to break up for sure. And it's going to cost some money, but hey, too bad. You don't like it, don't vote for Trump again. Right? This is why he's in such a great position. Despite him saying that he can run again or he can looking into it or whatever, the reality is we know that's likely not going to happen. So he's here to play for keeps. And I think he's doing a good job. Now, something else he did today, which was pretty cool. Meeting with the president of El Salvador, who's been quite a rock star. And President Trump and President Bukele, Nayib Bukele from El Salvador, having a visit today in the Oval Office. They were asked by Caitlin Collins from CNN if President Bukele is considering sending back an MS-13 gang member that a U.S. district judge has said should come back to the United States because of his asylum approval, and the response from President Bukele was, I would say, was stellar. Listen to this.
Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to have suggested that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right? It's always how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like.
Now, I just want to clarify. This is Caitlin Collins saying, are you planning on returning him? And he says, well, I can't. I suppose you're suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right? How? Trump says, it's only CNN. In the background, which I think is so funny. President Bukele responds, how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States? He's blown away by the question. He says, of course I'm not going to do it. It's like, let me, and he goes on to describe what he thinks of her question. Listen to this.
I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you can release him inside El Salvador?
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned
Pause it right there. So listen to this. And again, I'm just doing the play here because I think this is such a phenomenal conversation. He says, how can, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? This guy's a terrorist in El Salvador. He's a citizen of El Salvador. He was extradited from the United States to El Salvador and put in prison in El Salvador. So now the president of El Salvador, who's got a bad guy from his country in jail, now says, I don't have the power to send him back to the United States. I can't deport people out of my country to the U.S. I can only, take people that are citizens of mine from the U.S. is what he's in effect communicating. So the wise guy reporter next to Caitlin Collins says, but you could release him inside El Salvador. And he says, yeah, but I'm not releasing. We're not very fond of releasing terrorists in our country. And he used the right word. It is preposterous, this conversation. Go ahead.
Capital of the world, into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
They'd love to have a criminal, released into
I mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
They're
sick. These are sick people.
And Trump is just eating it up. Oh, these are sick people. Oh, they would love it. Oh, they'd love a criminal. Because ultimately, everybody here is missing the forest through the trees in a grand way, right? The guy was suspected of criminality here in the United States and was in the United States illegally. Let us say, and they've admitted, right, that he was a tier 2 person. He wasn't the main person, but he got swept up in this, and that was a clerical oversight. Doesn't mean he shouldn't have been deported. It means he probably shouldn't have been with that group. Okay, granted. He gets sent back. Now it's up to them to say, oh, well, you're our guy and, you're not a criminal here, so you're free. Or, oh, yes, you actually are a criminal here and you said that you were a criminal here and that if we deported you from the U.S. and you ended up in a jail in El Salvador because you're a criminal there, that you would be killed in prison because of your beef in the jail. That is the problem I don't want, right? On the street, I think they say, we don't want none of that smoke. Come on. Nobody wants a piece of that. That's insanity. And Trump is there just saying, oh, they would love a criminal. And he's right. These reporters are so concerned with getting this guy back that some zealous activist judge is doing something that, even if, let us just say the judge is within all of his rights, let's say the judge has no political motivation, this is a moot point. This person has been deported. This person has a jail sentence awaiting them in El Salvador. And the president of El Salvador is in your face telling you, I will not release a terrorist from my prison. Isn't that a period, the end, punto final? It is where I come from. But no. They want to keep it going because the media, again, they cannot see the forest through the trees. It's such a shame. And it's quite embarrassing, honestly. I know they're going to try and make a case against them, but they were just embarrassed by 2 world leaders today asking these series of very silly, poorly thought out questions. I mean, you could have framed it a different way. Like, Mr. President Bukele, there is a United States district judge that says that this was done in error. Any possibility of your foreign ministry looking into this and making any decisions that might coincide with what they're looking for? Not, hey, are you planning on releasing the guy? I don't think it's the same question. But hey, what do I know? I think you've got to ask the right questions, and I don't think they asked the right questions, but they definitely got the right responses, that's for sure. Anyway, I'm making fun of these guys for sure, but something that's definitely not funny at all, and I hate to do downer stories, but this is a downer. 60 Christians murdered in Nigeria. Very, very sad story here. The Fulani jihadists have murdered more than 60 Christians in a series of coordinated attacks across 7 Christian communities in Nigeria as Holy Week begins. There's not a whole lot about this in the media. We're going to bring you as much of it as we have straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
There is more news in your commentary, in your analysis, than there is on the news network.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
This seems to be the latest in a string of events that goes back years, but the Fulani herdsmen, they're often called, they are a kind of a nomadic tribe. They are a herding tribe, predominantly Muslim. Not all, but predominantly Muslim. The vast majority of them not radicalized, but many of them unfortunately are. And there have been these waves of attack for years. And the attacks have been along the lines of taking land. They're targeting predominantly Christian Nigerians. So they're slaughtering those people. They are doing all kinds of horrible, unspeakable things and then taking that land. And often it is dismissed within the Western media as land disputes, of course, those types of things. But it's really a religious war at its root.
That is Dumisami Washington from CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network, giving an update there on who these killers are, the terrorists in question here. And again, the jihadists known as the Fulani jihadists have murdered more than 60 Christians in a series of coordinated attacks across 7 Christian communities in Nigeria as Holy Week begins. Governor Caleb Mutfwang called for the bloody assaults in Bokos County, Plateau State, which is, he called it a genocide, in what is just the latest in a years-long war that's been waged by Islamists against Christians across Africa in general and in Nigeria in particular. The latest terror attacks, which targeted villages, over 1,000 Christians were displaced, 383 homes were destroyed, and a quote that we have here is, these armed Muslim Fulani herdsmen invaded our communities in large numbers, arriving on motorcycles and attacking us. That's a quote from the Christian Daily International Morning Star News and from Marin Aradong. So I want to get some insight on this. This was brought to my attention by persecution.org, which is the International Christian Concern Group, and the ICC. And our guest is the president of International Christian Concern, Jeff King. Jeff King, welcome.
Rich, it's an honor to be with you.
Likewise, sir. Great to have a conversation with you. Now, Jeff King, I hate having these conversations, not because I don't like you, but because I don't like that they're killing Christians. And I don't like when they're killing Muslims either. I mean, I don't think anybody should be getting killed, which is why I think, these calls for ceasefires are important all over the world. But in particular, when you're killing somebody because they worship the same God as you, you can't help but kind of take it a little personal, I feel. Bring us up to speed. What is going on with this genocide?
Well, first of all, I so appreciate you nailing it because it's a slow-mo genocide, slow motion genocide. It is a stealth jihad. So there's layers to it, but that's the core. And the group that's doing it is part of a much, much greater, it's a large tribe that's scattered across Africa. And if you look at where they are, wherever they're located in Africa, these are lawless areas that have been taken over by radical Islamists. That's who these guys are. So these attacks have gone on, Rich, for 20 years. You kind of referenced that. It's gone on for years. And up to 3.5 million Christians have lost their farms, have been displaced. And up to 100,000 killed. No one really knows the number. These killings are happening out in the bush, and the government's not too interested in providing real numbers to it. But it's just gone on. And the killers operate with impunity for 20 years. And it's almost like in our country, tens of millions, 40 million were killed. And the government keeps saying every year, gosh, it's so tough to find these guys. They're guerrilla fighters. They're out in the bush. Please, U.S. government, could you give us a few more billion in military aid? And Rich, you're never going to guess what the U.S. military, what the U.S. Congress does. We give them more money for military aid instead of calling them to account.
Unbelievable. I mean, I'm grateful for the work that's happening now in Washington to identify, wasteful spending and whatnot, because we can't continue doing this type of thing, funding the demise of innocents all over the place. And quite frankly, I think Trump is right. I'm probably a lot more hawkish than he is, but he doesn't want to fund any fighting. I mean, he's quite a pacifist, honestly. And it's probably high time that we have someone like that in office. But getting back to this, because this region of the world seems to be largely ignored, right? At least for people in my business. I don't even get these headlines. I mean, rarely get these headlines. But I saw this piece in Breitbart and the alert from you guys. But outside of that, CBN does a little piece on it. It gets, a flash in the pan. But I think had this been, 60 jihadists in Gaza that were killed in a strike by the IDF.
Oh, my gosh.
It would be wall-to-wall coverage. And I'm not trying to minimize their lives. I feel like the Christian lives are being minimized.
No, you nailed it once again. And unfortunately, this just goes on and on and on. So even, groups like mine, I'm shouting from the rooftops. I've done this for so many years, trying to wake people up, and it's slowly happening. But it just goes on and on. And as you said, the Christians do not get the news play that they should. I mean, this is literally a genocide, and I don't even have the number in the Palestinian area, how many have been killed, but everything dwarfs this. And not to take away from Israel, the attack in Israel, where 1,500 were killed. But this is massive, massive, massive.
Well, Jeff King, I want you to stand by. We're going to come right back and continue our conversation with Jeff King. He's president of International Christian Concern. Check them out at persecution.org. We're talking about the genocide, 60 Christians killed in Nigeria just ahead of Holy Week. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
Listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We're talking about this horrible story. Listen to this headline here. Breitbart News reporting armed Muslim attackers commit another massacre of Christians in Nigeria. Fulani jihadists have murdered more than 60 Christians in a series of coordinated attacks across 7 Christian communities in Nigeria just as Holy Week begins. This is a genocide as described by the governor of this state, Plateau State in Bokos County, Governor Caleb Mutfwang. And we're having a conversation with the president of ICC, International Christian Concern. Their website is persecution.org, and they focus on this stuff, right? They focus on the ongoing persecution in Nigeria and the Sahel region of North Central Africa, the strip of the African continent hugging the Sahara Desert, where there's extreme poverty and deep civil unrest and rampant extremism. And obviously this threatens the existence of Christians in all of those societies. Jeff King, welcome back.
Oh, it's great to be back.
Now, Jeff, as we continue our conversation here, because this stuff is, like I said, it's alarming. There seems to be an unofficial media blackout on it. It's just one of those things that gets overlooked, sadly, all too often. And one of the things that I want to bring to the attention of the listeners is you guys do this full time, right? You guys are focused on the genocide of Christians, the erasure of followers of Jesus in that part of Africa.
Yeah, well, we do it all over the world, and we've been doing it for a long time, 30 years, and more than 30 years. But but we've worked in Nigeria for a very long time, Rich. And, early on, I've been with ICC 22 years, and early on, the pattern wasn't clear. So we were hearing about these attacks and, attack after attack. And over a while, you start to hear things from the people being attacked and et cetera. And the patterns start to become clear. So in the beginning, we didn't know how big a problem we had. And over time, no one did. And then over time, it became clear that this was a massive land grab. It's more than just persecution. It's absolutely persecution. But it's also, this tribe is probably, you would say they're the smartest guys in the room in Nigeria. And they're looking ahead. They are cattle owners, and they've been nomadic in the past, and they know that era is closing out. So they're working this strategy where they're attacking the Middle Belt, the heartland, where all the Christians own the farmland, and they're driving them out. It's a massive political struggle where they're pushing out Christian voters. It's a wealth transfer. So they're taking over these farms and pushing all the Christians south. But the craziest thing, Rich, is like I said, this thing always goes on. And you'll hardly ever find the government talking about arrests or chasing down the perpetrators or people being put in prison. And oftentimes these attacks happen right next to police stations, to army stations, and nothing ever happens. Now, Rich, here's where you can get a really quick response out of the Nigerian government. Did I lose you?
No, I'm listening.
Oh, I'm so sorry. There's a sound effect. Yeah, the one time you can really get a response out of the Nigerian government is the few times when Christians have taken up arms to defend themselves. And that's when the government's helicopter gunships come out and shoot up those villages. So all that should lead you to ask yourself a question. What is going on? How can a government not respond to this over 20 years? And I think a lot of conservative listeners, and I can be surprised, there's a deep state in Nigeria, but it's the Fulanis and it's radical Muslims, and they control intel, they control the police, they control the army. And so it doesn't matter who's in office, it doesn't matter who the president is, these things go on, and no action can be taken.
Yeah, this is very unfortunate, but I don't know the answer to this, Jeff King, but for maybe, salvation through Jesus, right? And really seeing the light, because I got to tell you, looking at it through human eyes, all I can say is, for years, people tell you, don't talk about politics and don't talk about religion. But when you look at every big war that's ever been started, they're always started over politics and religion. And obviously, these are the most important things that people are willing to kill each other over. And the idea of not talking about them is just cowardice. It's just, hey, just be afraid of talking about these things because you might end up getting into a war. And those with the courage have to have the courage to see it all the way through. But I don't want to come across as a radical, because I don't mean to be. But it seems that there's a group here that's trying to raise cattle or do what they're doing and just live their lives. And there's another group that's saying, I want what you have and I'm going to kill you because I don't like you, I don't like your faith, and I want your property. Does that sum it up?
I think that's pretty good. Yeah, and on a mass scale. And like I said, so here's another angle too that I mentioned this briefly. But you have to look at the Fulanis. Now, the Fulanis are a tribe, and they exist. They exist beyond Nigeria. Now, and here's the thing. Early on, we started to hear this, and I've heard this consistently, for 20 years. But the Christians will report when their villages are attacked, it's like these guys weren't Nigerian. They were foreigners. So they're Fulanis that are often coming in from other countries, and they're being transported in and armed. So again, this is a war. And then, so hold that in your mind, and then think about this, which I already mentioned. It's like you have to look at a map of the Fulani distribution across Africa. And it runs in an area called the Sahel. It's from East Africa all the way to the west. And scattered throughout this massive, massive area are the tribes of Fulanis. And then you go look at where the Islamist attacks are happening in this area. It's complete, perfect overlay with the Fulanis. That's who these guys are. That's who's running the deep state in the government.
So that's where the control comes from. I mean, this is same playbook that we see in Gaza, right? The Hamas folks took over politically, and there went everything. Yeah,
unfortunately, the Palestinians could have lived in peace, and it's not really their fault. The Iranians took over. The Iranians were creating, as you know, numerous proxy armies for a pincer movement on Israel, where everyone was going to attack at once. And so the average person really had no vote in this. They had no say. If you spoke up, you were going to be dealt with.
Yeah.
But it's a tribal movement. Yeah, it's a tribal movement that's beyond Nigeria. And at the same time, it's purely also Nigerian because of the deep state, which we're all familiar with at this point in our own country.
Now, before we wrap, I want to get your take on what you think, the United States can do to maybe bring an end to this. Obviously, you guys are doing a wonderful job bringing awareness to it, but a lot has to be done here. Where do we go?
Yeah, well, first of all, it starts at the top, and for the last 4 years, nothing was going to happen. So love him or hate him, President Trump tends to be very vocal. He will speak his mind, and he will call a spade a spade. So that's first of all, it's the bully pulpit, what's happening in the presidency, and will they be called out? So the Nigerians are a very business-oriented people. They're the New Yorkers of Africa, so to speak. They're the business people of Africa, very intent on making money and being wealthy, and so anything that would threaten that will get their attention quickly. So first of all, some plain speaking from the presidency would go a long ways. Now, the second part, it kind of gets into D.C., the U.S. government machinery, but there's some lists we can put them on that would really shame them and restrict them, and it's called the CPC. I won't get into all the details, but that's a government list that, first of all, names a country as one of particular concern on human rights and religious human rights, and so it would call them out for persecution, then start to apply some punishments. So the Congress has to do that, the State Department, and the State Department, unfortunately, is often the problem. They exist to get along with countries where that's not the need here. The need is to stand up. The blood of almost 100,000 Christians is crying out to us here in the West, and the governments in the West have to wake up and say, we're not going to do business as usual.
Do you see a lot of involvement from Vladimir Putin and Russia coming to the aid of Christians that are being slaughtered?
No, not there. Not in Nigeria.
Yeah, but I just find it odd because Putin holds himself out to be some sort of defensor of the Christian faith, and when push comes to shove, he's nowhere to be found. Anyway, I want to thank you for your time, brother. I appreciate it. Could you tell everybody how they could learn more about your organization and keep up to speed with everything you guys are up to?
Yeah, I so appreciate that. People can go to persecution.org to find us.
Check them out at persecution.org, persecution.org. Jeff King, I appreciate you, brother. Godspeed to you. Keep up the great work.
All right, sir. God bless.
You bet. God bless. And amigos, Your thoughts, calls, and reactions to what is going on all across the country at night with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America. And you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, I was going to go to your calls, but it seems we sabotage our calls by scaring them off the line. Great job. Let us go to, I don't know if the person's on the call anymore. I think we scared them off the line. So we're going to do something else now. We're going to talk about, let's see. Now we're going to stall for time. Hang on, work with me here. Let's go to this right here. This is something I wanted to go to. P. Diddy has pled guilty to new federal charges. And this is interesting. He says, I didn't do it, Judge, but I'm pleading not guilty. Now, you know, what's interesting here with these things is sometimes you get a person that is guilty as the day is long, right? But maybe not on the crime that you got him on. And they get a raw deal. And this is no defense of Diddy. I don't know the guy. I really don't know the guy. But it seems to me like a Harvey Weinstein. And again, I think Harvey Weinstein is a DB, for lack of better words. And I know that there's a whole lot of people now coming to his defense saying, you know, he didn't do a whole bunch of the stuff he's being accused of. Matter of fact, we had his lawyer on this program a while back, Harvey Weinstein's lawyer, on one of his appeals, Arthur Idala, someone I respect, someone I know. And he was just standing up for the rule of law, saying the way they got Weinstein wasn't right. And this is the same thing Trump talks about, right? That when they do these trumped up charges against people, they do everything to railroad people into submission. I don't know what the story is with Diddy. I've heard rumors for years. But today, he pleads not guilty. Forgive me. I didn't do it, Judge. I didn't do it. Let me give you the scoop on this. So Pete Diddy appeared in court today in Manhattan for his arraignment on two new charges, one for sex trafficking by force and the other for fraud and coercion, and another for transportation to engage in prostitution. And a couple of things that he says he would do differently, but he didn't do. The feds have tacked on additional charges in a superseding indictment. We talked about that last week. The third one that we've seen so far in this Diddy case. And Diddy showed up in court today with white hair and a short beard and pled not guilty to the superseding indictment charges. Man, he went gray in jail. That sucks. Or maybe he just had a good barber and was, getting the Just for Men treatment at the barbershop every week. Because he's only in his 50s. That's not usually the gray era. But we don't have a photo, so we just have to kind of go with it. Anyway, Diddy's now facing 5 criminal charges overall, 2 counts of sex trafficking, 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, and 1 count of racketeering. And he's pled not guilty to all of these charges. So we'll keep you posted on that. I'd love to get somebody, both sides, one of the people bringing the case and somebody in defense of Diddy. That would be great to have a conversation with them. I'd be curious to know. One thing I could tell you is this. They say Diddy did this, Diddy did that, and they go after him. Got it. And then all of a sudden, 87,000 people start suing the guy civilly for all sorts of, all sorts of things, whatever they may be. Whether it's, following this Cassie thing, right? His ex-girlfriend, where he was on video beating the crap out of her in the hotel room hallway. Obviously, this is bad, and he didn't get in trouble for that, right? That's interesting. It's all on tape. They settle out of court, but no criminal charge there, which I find so odd. Probably have to add that to my panel discussion on Diddy. But now everybody wants to sue the guy. Now, I don't know if that's everybody saying, well, you know what? He did it to me too, so I'm coming forward. Or, you know what? I dealt with him once, and since everybody will believe me, I'm going to go after him. And that's the double-edged sword of these things. That's exactly what happened in the Me Too movement, which started with Harvey Weinstein. So I don't know. I don't know that I'm sold yet, but I am sold on him beating the crap out of that girl on the hotel elevator lobby landing there, right in front of the elevator. And that's enough for me to see. Does that mean he's a sex trafficker? I don't know. Does that mean he's a DB? For sure. Anyway, let's see. We take a pause right here. We come back to your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
To the phones we go. Jojo, Joliet, Illinois, WLS. Go right ahead. Quickly.
Well, the tax tariffs are going to cause supposed, financial pain on the taxpayers. But if they give them a tax credit for the amount that added tax onto things or tariffs onto things, wouldn't that be easing the pain a little bit?
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the idea of any additional tax cut for sure, and tax credit. I love that. What I don't know, and I'll tell you, I'm not sold on the idea that everything gets passed on to the end user. I'm just not, and I'll explain why. I think in many cases it may happen, or in some, right? I don't know if it's in all. For example, if you operate like Dollar Tree, right, which is like Dollar General, but Dollar General, everything's like $5. Dollar Tree used to be $1. Then during COVID, they went up to $1.25, which I'm curious to know how it's affected their business. I think it probably hasn't made a huge dent. But I think if they do it again to the $1.50 store, the $1.75, the $2 store, or just keep it, kind of like we're still $1.25 plus. And I've seen items like that in there. I think ultimately people just won't go there, right? They'll go somewhere else because it's no longer competitive. Now, I believe that if Dollar Tree, and I'm just using them as an example because it makes the most sense, if they buy stuff from China and China says, oh, well, that used to cost you 60 cents and you're selling it for $1.25, so you're making, 65 cents, but now it's going to cost you, 105 or whatever it is. I don't see them selling more of those items. I don't think they're going to say, well, all right, we're the $2 store, because I just don't think the public goes for it. I think their business model becomes antiquated, and it's like, hey, it's the end of this rodeo. It's like when you had a good gig and the gig is up. So I think some industries are going to subsidize the increased, the 10% tariff that most countries are facing, because it makes sense for them to keep doing business steadily. That's my thought. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Jojo, thanks for the call. Peter, coming right back to you guys and the rest of everybody that's on hold. 833-482-5337. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world. and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Monday night edition of the program. It's 7 minutes after the hour. We're live, we're national, and I'm happy to be here with you. Blessed to be on this microphone. We're kicking off Holy Week. Of course, happy Passover to all of our Jewish brethren out there. And the shenanigans continue coming out of Washington all over the place. You got the media really digging in, right? Doubling down to rescue a gang member, a terrorist gang member from El Salvador. That was laughable. We talked a little bit about that last hour. We're going to get into more of the presidential visit from Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, visiting the United States and meeting in the Oval Office with Donald Trump. But there's a couple of things I want to get into because, of course, the movement on the big, beautiful bill, which includes no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, it continues to move its way towards Congress. And it's in Congress, obviously, and we've got to make sure that the Senate does what they have to do with it. And I want to play a clip for you. Speaker Mike Johnson was making the rounds, and he was on with Maria Bartiromo on Fox News Channel yesterday, and he says he's not a fan of raising the top tax rate, which I'm happy to hear because we shouldn't be raising any tax rates. Listen to this.
Now, Mr. Speaker, one of the movements within the Congress is to, I guess, raise taxes on the rich in order to pay for these tax extensions for the lower earners, like the no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. The idea that you can have a new tax bracket of 40% for the highest earners. Are you seriously considering that?
Well, I'm not a big fan of doing that. I mean, we're the Republican Party, and we're for tax reduction for everyone. So, I mean, that's a general principle that we always try to abide by. There's lots of discussion, lots of ideas on the Hill. People have different thoughts and theories on how we can solve this perfect equation to get all of this done. But I wouldn't put any money on any of that yet. I guess everybody, I would say just stay tuned. The next 5 to 6 weeks are going to be critical as all these negotiations happen in the committees of jurisdiction. You'll hear lots of rumors and lots of talk, but we'll see where it all lands. We've got to build consensus. Remember, I've got to get 218 votes in the House, and we've got to get 51 votes in the Senate. So You can be assured that there'll be a comfort level of everyone before we move that bill to the floor.
Comfort levels need to be there. Listen, you know, the comfort level of so many in the United States Senate is adding more pork barrel spending so they could bring home the bacon back to their state and say, look what we did, right? This is the game that's played time and again, and this is what we're trying to eliminate here. And I hope that Leader Thune is able to pull it off. A lot of people say a lot of nice things about him. He's never, introduced himself to me. I don't know the guy. And I haven't seen anything yet. So let's see what happens. Hopefully he, makes it happen. And really proves he's not a McConnell and that he can corral the McConnells and the Susan Collinses of the Senate to do the right thing because America needs this. Meanwhile, you've got senators like AOC's communist sympathizing grandpa, Bernard Sanders, right? Healthcare is a right. Now, Bernie Sanders, he's been saying that America is turning into an oligarchy. In 1993, in 1994, in 1995, in 07, in 2012, 2014, 2015, 2017, 2018. Man, Bernie Sanders has been singing this song for a long time. You know why? It's the same song that Fidel sings. Fidel Castro, and now, he's dead. His brother and the current president, Diaz-Canel, they all sing the same song. It's because of the Americans, the imperialist, colonialist Americans. They sing the same thing. The opposition party in Puerto Rico, they sing the same thing. It's the United States. They've taken over our land, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, my parents come from Puerto Rico. I love Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has, I don't know anybody who knows a free Puerto Rico. I don't know anyone who knows Puerto Rico as independent. It was named Puerto Rico by Spain, its first colonizer. And it spent 400 years under that rule. Spain got into some problems. They didn't fight with Spain. They decided to fight with us after we took over because, to the winner go the spoils. And I just think, listen, I understand any countries wanting to be sovereign. I don't want to go off on a tangent here. But when it comes to Puerto Rico, it's just one of those things where it has not been independent. It has not been free. It literally has been part of the U.S. for, 100 years or something like that now, a little more, whatever it is. So what is it that we're fighting about here? We're not. What we're using is communist talking points about driving strife and division. And that's exactly what Bernie Sanders does right here in the U.S. So you don't have to go that far to Puerto Rico to see these tactics. You don't have to go to Cuba to see these tactics. You could see them right here with Bernard Sanders. Listen to this.
This great country of ours is moving very rapidly in the direction of oligarchy. The United States of America today is increasingly becoming an oligarchy. More and more moving toward an oligarchy. We are moving in the direction of oligarchy. We will move even more rapidly in the direction of an oligarchy. This great country is evolving into an oligarchic society. It is called oligarchy, and that is the system we are rapidly moving toward. This is a budget that moves our country rapidly into the direction of oligarchy. A handful of billionaires are moving this entire planet toward an oligarchic society.
Start off with the bad news, which is pretty bad, and that is that under Donald Trump, this country is hurtling rapidly toward oligarchy.
While he's singing this song of oligarchy, his backup singer-in-chief, my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, AOC, all out crazy herself, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She says America was set up just to be destroyed. Listen to this.
But also, the other way I think you can think about it is that we are, perhaps we are in the downfall of the broken way. This was not built to last. Inequity, injustice is not built to last. It lasts a long time. It could last hundreds of years, but ultimately it crumbles into this, a small cohort of incompetent people that create damage. And from that, something new can spring. And so maybe something is declining right now, but maybe it deserves to decline.
That's AOC. Maybe it deserves to decline. This is why she governs the way she does, right? And creates policy the way she does. AOC all out crazy. I couldn't have said it any better, right? The only thing that deserves to decline is you. Unbelievable. You and your reign in Congress. Now, this is the thought coming from the left, right? And these are your candidates, right? They're out there campaigning. And I've got some campaign footage of AOC and Bernie, the dynamic duo in Coachella. We'll get to that in a little bit. You know who else is throwing his hat in the ring, or at least saying he has no choice but to contemplate a run for president? Stephen A. Smith. We've had him on the show. He's very entertaining, the sportscaster extraordinaire. He says he's running for president. You got Gavin Newsom doing interviews with conservative influencers. He wants to run for president. Those are your Democrat options to go against Vance or Rubio or DeSantis. You got a pretty solid bench. Maybe Hegseth. Who knows? What happens on that side of the aisle. There's a lot of talent on the other team. So I can't wait to see how that shapes up. But until then, we've got so much to cover. The current president, Donaldus Magnus El Trompito, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, he met with Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, today. And I want to dig into that conversation a little bit, and I want to do it with somebody who understands this a little better than most. She's from Gateway Hispanic, and she's going to join us next. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
What they've done to us at the border should never and can never be forgotten. It's a sin, what they did, and you are helping us out, and we appreciate it. Thanks.
Actually, what you're doing with the border is remarkable. It has dropped, 95%? It's incredible.
As of this morning, 99%, 99.1% to be exact.
Why are those numbers not in the media?
Well, they get out with the fake news, like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They only like putting out because I think they hate our country, actually.
That, of course, President Trump in the Oval Office with President Nayib Bukele of El Salvador. And I want to get some analysis on this. They're talking about the fake news media from our guest. She's the chief legal and policy analyst at Gateway Hispanic. She's got a PhD in law. She's an attorney at law, and she's our guest, Maria Herrera Melado. Welcome. Welcome back.
Good evening, Rich. Thank you for having me back.
My pleasure. Good to hear from you. And Maria, when you hear this commentary that President Bukele and President Trump are freely having over the fake news media, what's your initial reaction to that?
I think both presidents have been victims of fake news, and they have been, attacked by the liberal media, and they really are, they're mad. They're angry, and as President Trump suggests, he thinks that media is hurting the American public, the United States of America. And the truth is, if you look at what happened during the past 4 years, that he is right. There was no way that they should have been covering up what Biden was doing, letting millions of immigrants coming unvetted. And that's the truth. And now they're criticizing Trump for harsh policies. But he's just trying to make things right. He's just trying to defend this nation. And Bukele, he made one of the, most dangerous countries in the world into one of the safest countries in the world. Was it tough? Yes. Sometimes he might make mistakes, probably. But people in El Salvador can walk freely. They have their life back, and that's exactly what Trump is trying to do. And CNN, MSNBC, all this media, which sometimes I even go to those some analysis, attack you like crazy, just when you're even defending common sense policies.
Yeah, no, it's funny you say that, but that's the truth. Maria Herrera Melado, let me tell you that I agree with what you're saying, and I find it interesting that the media, they're still doing the same thing they do, kind of drive one side of the story, as opposed to trying to call things down the middle, knowing that Bukele's not a wallflower and that he's been kind of allied with Trump, but yet it really doesn't matter, right? As an example, today they were there after they make this comment about the fake news and whatnot, and they've known about these, their thoughts on this. From CNN, Caitlin Collins asked President Bukele if he has any intention to release the person that was deported by the United States back to El Salvador, who's a MS-13 terrorist. And listen to this exchange.
Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to have suggested that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how can I return him to the United States? Like, could I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So you could release him inside El Salvador?
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
They'd love to have a criminal, released into our
country. There's a fascination.
They would love it.
They're
sick. These are sick people.
Doctora, I remember about 10 or 15 years ago that there were more people dying in El Salvador than any other part of the world that was not at war. And those were horrifying numbers. And to see what President Bukele has been able to do in his 4 or 5 years in office, I think is remarkable. Your thoughts?
Absolutely. So, Bukele, he changed his country, and now he's willing to cooperate with Trump. This case is very special, because this immigrant won a withholding of removal, which is a suspension of deportation in the U.S. immigration court. Mm-hmm. And, the government recognized that they might have made administrative mistake, but things are getting pretty difficult. And I was talking about this to a Venezuela radio station and say, I don't see the U.S. or any other country bringing immigrants back, even if there was a mistake made, and that's exactly what is happening. Especially because Bukele understands that this is a citizen of El Salvador, so you might see something happening that if he has been wrongfully even deported or he's in El Salvador, they're not going to do anything because they're clear about what they need to do to stop, this madness of people joining gang members and then entire families being ripped apart. And they have hundreds, thousands of citizens being killed in their nation. And we saw that during Biden administration, Rich. We saw the Tren de Aragua beating policemen in New York. We saw these people killing young American girls. So if a government makes a mistake, you might see an administrative relief, but something like bringing back a citizen of another country, Bukele said so. No, I'm not going to do it. And Trump said, and Marco Rubio and Pam Bondi say, he's a citizen of El Salvador. We're not going to bring them back. He's not going to bring. So, unfortunately, Rich, immigration, the industry, it's like full of contradictions. And we have like a big group of people that think that immigrants' rights are more important than national security. And under Trump, that's not going to be the case. He made that clear, and people voted for him.
Yeah, very good point. Folks, we're on with Maria Herrera Melado. She's a PhD in law. She's an attorney at law and a chief legal and policy analyst at Gateway Hispanic. Make sure you follow her on X at Maria Herrera ME. And Maria, I want to get your take on the rest of the conversation, some of President Trump's comments when we return straight ahead. So stick with me. Folks, we're coming right back with Maria Herrera Melado and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, President Trump said in his State of the Union address, China has too much influence over the Panama Canal and America's going to take it back. And that's exactly what I was charged to do, what we're continuing to do. China's influence cannot control our own backyard, especially a critical waterway, key terrain like the Panama Canal. You mentioned 40% of ships are U.S. ships. 75% are going to or from a port. So we were able to secure two historic agreements, one with the Panama Canal Authority, that our ships, our military vessels and auxiliary vessels will travel first and free through that Panama Canal. And then we also signed a memorandum of understanding with the defense secretary over there and the president that established a robust and growing U.S. presence, right? You need to secure that key terrain. So Fort Sherman will reopen jointly with the Panamanians, a jungle school, and we're going to have a larger U.S. presence at the invitation of Panama, working with them to keep the communist Chinese out. If we can't use that waterway in a key contingency, then China has an advantage. Other presidents have allowed us, we've been sort of asleep at the wheel. President Trump has said we need to be serious about our own backyard. That includes a place like the Panama Canal. And I want to thank President Molino, a pro-Trump, pro-America president of Panama, who's sticking his neck out against communists whose influence was real there, Maria. We could see it. You could feel it. The communist Chinese want to control politicians. They're building infrastructure projects. They want to surveil. They want to take that canal. President Trump says, not on our watch, and we're fighting back.
That is Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth talking about Panama and the Panama Canal. And I want to get the analysis from our guest, La Doctora Maria Herrera Melado. She's a PhD in law, attorney at law, chief legal and policy analyst at Gateway Hispanic. Doctora, tell us your thoughts on what's happening in the Panama Canal and if you think this is going to go our way in the long term.
Well, first of all, I'm thrilled that our government is going to make sure that Chinese.
All right, I think we've lost the good doctor, but we will put her on. We'll come back to her once her line has been reestablished. But I'm curious to hear her thoughts on what happens with Panama, because there's definitely a lot happening, right? And this is one of those things where everybody wants to criticize every single move that Trump makes, every single move, whether it is the move to try and regain American influence. It's almost as if Trump does it, it's bad. Now, I think we've got the good doctor back. Doctora, continue. You were talking about how happy you are to see the administration doing something about Panama.
Yes, Rich, I was saying that I'm thrilled to see our government going to the Panama Canal and making sure that Chinese influence is not increasing. You know, even the president of Panama has admitted that he didn't know why, his country signed that memorandum with the Chinese authorities, that they're not getting anything from it. And they're like, they're putting Panama in a really awkward position against its best trading partner, which is the United States. And as President Trump rightly points, the U.S., U.S. citizens built that canal. There is an agreement, and Chinese are taking over the entire southern hemisphere reach. We see they're doing exactly the same thing in Peru now, and the influence of Chinese is a national security threat to the United States. Why in Panama? Because it's, where all the vessels are crossing. And Pete Hegseth and the U.S. government have explained that, in case the Chinese decide to block, it's going to be dangerous. And why are they allowing the Chinese to take more and more influence in all those countries? Because of corruption. These politicians in those countries in the southern hemisphere, they're very corrupt, and they're taking bribes and they're selling their countries. And President Trump is not willing to accept that, because the U.S. has put millions of dollars to help these countries. Unfortunately, with Democrat administration, we see what they're being invested, in transgender operas, in animal rights, and all this crazy. But this administration is not willing to play games. They know what is at stake, and U.S. citizens need to understand that he's serious about it, and that he's just not saying things or doing stuff just to appease other countries. He's really trying to put America first. And again, we voted for that. The majority of Americans voted for that, and people should respect that he's trying to do the best for our country.
Dr. Maria Herrera Melado, I want to ask you about this, or really I want to share a thought with you because it kind of reinforces what you said. I'm having some countertops put in my kitchen, and the guy, the technician putting them in, he is from Peru. And we were talking about the Chinese influence in Peru. And it was a fascinating story he was telling me, because I didn't know about this. He was telling me just like on Friday. He was telling me how he said there's so much Chinese influence. He said, as a matter of fact, I was shocked at what I was hearing from the guy. He tells me the last president we had, the guy was basically installed by what did he say? He said by the CIA or some like version of the CIA. He said our people really haven't had a real firm hand in elections up until recently, that people started getting actually involved in paying attention. And I thought these were unique American problems, but apparently they're not. And he was telling me how he is very much in favor of the Trump policies. And this is a guy who, came as an immigrant here some years ago and has made his way in the United States. So I thought very interesting perspective from somebody coming from South America. And I also wanted to ask you about the change of guard in Ecuador, because they have a new president in Daniel Noboa, who's about 9 or 10 years younger than me. Tell us more.
Yeah. So, Rich, I was talking to a Peruvian attorney the other day, and I interviewed him, and he was saying the same thing. Listen, I've been researching a little bit about this. So the port of Chancay, they're like selling entries and exits and all the spaces to the Chinese, so they can control, that part of the country, and they can have more influence over Peru. But it's not only that. He was mentioning that the owners of most minerals in Peru today are Chinese, that the owners of cities, the contracts, the largest contracts for public works in Peru, now they're being awarded to Chinese companies. So, yeah, they're concerned. And not only that, he made an interesting point. He said, Maria, when people start complaining about Trump tariffs and what he's doing in terms of, trying to balance trade, international trade, I asked my colleagues, how many American products besides Apple do you see in Peru? How many? Tell me the last time you bought something from the United States. And nobody could answer that. Now, if you're in the United States, you buy your fruit in Walmart, you see from Peru. There are a lot of products from Peru in the United States. The U.S. is open to every other nation, and they're trying always to welcome everybody. But there is an anti-Americanism, anti-imperialism in all these nations, and they really don't respect the United States. They don't value what the U.S. has done for the rest of the world. Maybe the U.S. has abandoned a little bit those countries over the last 2 decades, and that's why Chinese want influence. But that's people need to wake up. It's really unfair how they see the U.S. and how much they welcome Nicolas Maduro, Chinese, and all these communists. It's crazy, and that's why they keep voting wrong. Now, on the Ecuador election, yes, Daniel Noboa has won, and that's a relief for Ecuadorian. They suffered tremendously under Correa, who is a fugitive, who was so corrupt and so far left. He wanted to destroy his home country. Now, Noboa, he's 30 years old. He says publicly he's center-left. He's progressive. He's a progressive, but when you talk to people from Ecuador, they say, well, at least we dodged this ball. We didn't want to be governed by another Chavez. Unfortunately, Rich, I don't know what happened, but the left has taken almost the entire continent. And Bukele and Milei are just exceptions. But more education is needed, and countries like Peru are fighting. They're one of the few countries that escape communism. But we need to do better also to educate people, and that's why President Trump welcomed for his inauguration ceremony Ecuadorian President Noboa. He's trying to reach out to this South American country, and they say, hey, if you're going to welcome Chinese companies, we're going to hit you hard with tariffs. So rethink your strategies.
That's a very good message to send, I think. Folks, we're on with Dr. Maria Herrera Melado. And, Doctora, let everybody know where they can find you and your commentary and all the work you're doing.
Absolutely. So they can find me on social media with my first and second last name. I'm from Spain, Maria Herrera Melado. We also launched 8 months ago Gateway Hispanic, which is a great media outlet. We're like really giving that battle where we're trying to educate Hispanics about what's really going on. They never get the message from Telemundo or Univision, Rich. So we started getting all this information from alternative media, and they're surprised. They have no idea, for example, Rich, what was happening with people, burning Tesla stores, and they cannot believe what the left and these crazy people are doing to other American patriots just because they're conservatives. And we're really battling that because I think our community needs to be more educated. They can vote whichever way they want, but they need to know the truth. And unfortunately, Univision, Telemundo, and the Hispanic media has been lying to them, have been telling them they're victims, this country hates them, but the reality tells otherwise. How many millionaires, how many wealthy Hispanics are in this country just because of the freedom and the opportunities that this country offer them? And that's the reality. So stop hatred against America, because this is the country where they can live freely and where they can enjoy so many opportunities. And we're trying to send that message so people understand more about the American values and principles and understand what this country is really about.
Outstanding. Lo dejamos ahí. Fascinating conversation. Doctora Maria Herrera Melado. Check her out. Check out gatewayhispanic.com. Follow her on X. Un placer como siempre. It's a pleasure like always. Doctor, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rich. Have a good night. My
pleasure. You too. God bless. And amigos, your calls and more coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The Republicans' recklessness and chaotic approach to reducing the size of government has shown us what we've already known. Concepts of a plan don't work. This is the committee's fourth hearing, and still no one from the so-called Department of Government Efficiency has testified before this committee about their plans to break the federal government, because as it turns out, breaking the federal government doesn't just hurt people you don't like. It's not just going to be Democrats who miss out on Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, or only Democratic veterans who will miss out on their VA benefits. Their approach will negatively impact all Americans. So it's unfortunate that Republicans have taken a seemingly bipartisan issue and included it as part of their scam to subsidize tax giveaway for billionaires. They haven't proposed anything that will improve the efficiency of the government. Instead, they have put the country on a path to a recession and implemented the largest tax increase on Americans in decades through Trump's tariffs. This hearing is their latest attempt to try to convince the American people that dismantling public-facing agencies will somehow improve government efficiency. Let me tell you, it won't.
That, if you didn't recognize the voice, is the melodious sound of the Congresswoman from Texas, Jasmine Crockett. Some are saying she's a presidential timber. I don't know, but I hope she is. And I want to know your thoughts. Are Republicans breaking health care in America? Let's go to Peter calling us from Montreal, Canada, listening to WVMT, the blowtorch out of Vermont. Peter, go for it.
Wow, Rick, what a show tonight. You're covering
It's rich,
Dr.
but thank
Maria
you.
Herrera. I love what she was saying. I'm calling you from the Great White North here. As for Crockett, oh, yeah, what did she say about a tree? Anyway, I'm calling, first of all, I really appreciate what Dr. Maria Herrera was saying about Telemundo and, the news and generating hatred towards America, because we have the same problem in Canada, okay? We have this legacy media that does that. We have a federal election coming up in 14 days, big one. And, the liberals, the Canadian Democrats are... it's the same thing. Make Trump the enemy, create the hostility. But Rich, the reason I called you is there's so many Hollywood celebrities and so on who've been threatening to move to Canada if Il Trumpito wins. And, they make a big deal. But I just want to give you
Have they all become your neighbors?
Rich, I haven't seen any. Where are they?
Oh, that's great. Now, what do you think? Well, I think they say that the health care is better in Canada, Peter.
Look, first of all, it's such a big general issue. I would say no. I hear a number of horror stories. I hear good stories. I hear people who really need care. It's something. It's beyond me. From what I've experienced, you know what? It leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, this is what I hear from a lot of people who use it, and long wait times, very long wait times. But in this, enough about Canada. Listen, voter identification and registration, right? It remains a pretty contentious issue in the U.S., does it not? Wasn't there something in North Carolina recently? And I just wanted to say, if I could take a minute of time to address all those Democrat politicians who listen, to your show, and they're, and they go on, and the celebrities, oh, Canada's so great, oh, we got great health care, oh, we got this, blah, 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 blah. We have an election in 14 days, and I just want to say, Democrats, listen, I got my voter information card. All Canadians get this. You want to vote in the Canadian election? I'm going to read it to you right from the card. 3 simple rules. 1, be a Canadian citizen. 2, be at least 18-year-olds on election day. And Democrats, are you listening? Rule number 3, prove your identity and address.
That's exactly what we need to do in the United States, and I think they're trying to do that with the Real ID. I'm not thrilled about Real ID, but I get it. They're up between a rock and a hard place, and something's got to give, and I think that's going to be the give. Peter, thanks for the call, brother. I got to pause right here. I'm coming right back to calls from Georgia. Let me see, Arizona, and others that are online. Hopefully I can get to everybody. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, to the phones we go. Let's go to Paul. He's in Globe, Arizona, KFNX. Quickly, Paul, we only have seconds to go.
Okay, your comment about Putin and Russia, I think, was totally inappropriate by weaving Russia into a situation where the United States obviously is doing little or nothing about it. As part of this Russophobia
Well, we have a CPC designation, right? We come to the aid of countries that are being persecuted. Russia does nothing of the sort, but yet they're happy to put out their propaganda saying that they are the great white hope of Christians all across the world, that they're saving the East, and they're full of crap. And you're just another pro-Putin patriot bot. And there went all my time to go to all the good callers. Thank you, Paul, for your call. David in Valdosta, WDDQ, shout out to you guys. Sorry I couldn't get to you. I had a pro-Putin patriot on the line there, but we got to get to everybody around here. Tony in Montreal, everybody else, thank you. Hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.